Tonight is Tuesday, March the 19th, 2013. This is Managerial Economics ECP 3703. And we are chatting for a few minutes anyway about the exam that was returned last week or so. And the results on the exam were generally not very good, but among the people who have been putting in the time, etc., there were some extremely good scores. I would comment that 6 of the 7 highest scores came from people who managed to attend class. The highest score came from someone who typically isn't in class, and 2 other people did reasonably well who don't come to class, so that reassures me that you can pass this course without coming to class, but that it is helpful if you can make it to class. Now, we were talking about the question on break-even analysis and the assisted living facility, and the fact that it was a 20-point question, and if you failed to translate part of the data from a monthly into an annual basis, you got the wrong answers all the way through, but you still only lost 3 points if the rest of your calculations were correct. And then, Rebecca, you made the comment something about feeling sorry for me having to read all the voluminous stuff you put on that exam. But, and this is the reason I just turned the camera on, exams are the opportunity to show how much you know, not how succinct and brief you can be. And too many people don't get that. And the only, and think about this, did you have to take a professional writing course in the beginning? Okay, we're doing that with the SOM program too. And there's some resentment about why are you being so chicken and nitpicking about my writing? Because the work you turn into me, the writings you turn into me as an employee, may be just about the only thing I have to gauge your performance on. And so when you write a book of information on an exam like this, that is a good thing, assuming it's correct, that is a good thing. And indeed, yours worse. So, any other comments or questions about the exam?
The bonus on number 1.
The bonus question was to calculate their profit maximizing quantity of sales and price. And that kind of leads us into the way we want to start tonight's discussion. When we hear the term profit maximization, well, in a finance or accounting course, that means what? Maximize your revenues and minimize your costs. Because profit is revenue minus cost. And we want to maximize that. But when you hear that term in an economics class, profit maximization, the first thing you want to think of is marginal revenue equal marginal cost. That's the rule for profit maximization, and we're going to explore that a little more. Recall with me, what's the definition of marginal cost? Remember that? Marginal anything, for that matter, in economics. Marginal means the extra, or for the next one. So if I said the marginal cost of producing unit number 171 on my production run is $12, that's the cost of producing that unit. It doesn't count fixed costs. Fixed or fixed, they don't change. It says, what was the extra cost when I made that unit? And then we say, well, if I sold it, how much extra revenue would I make for my company? In other words, what is the marginal revenue of unit number 171? And if the marginal revenue is $18, well, hallelujah, I just made $6. So I should go ahead and produce and sell it. But if I get to the point to where my marginal revenue is only $10, that tells me I shouldn't be producing that many units. And I always want to aim for this point right here. Where will they become equal? And we know, we generally see, that as I produce more, let's do a little quantity thing here and cost thing. As I produce more, generally speaking, my costs rise, my marginal cost per unit. And generally speaking, my marginal revenues decline. We'll go through that as a review here shortly. But I'm looking for the point where they intersect. And read down, and that tells me the profit maximizing quantity, pi max, Q sub pi max. I don't want to produce less than that, or I'm leaving money on the table. I could have made some money on those earlier units if I'd have gone ahead and produced them. I don't want to produce more than that because I'd start losing money every time I produce another one. So this is where I'm headed. And we're going to do that. And in fact, the extra credit question asks you to do that mathematically. And so what you were going to do, and we're going to do this again tonight, you had to mathematically locate the marginal cost and the marginal revenue in that problem. So let's take a look at that. We had a demand function that we built based on 2 data points. We said, here's what we are going to guess to be our demand function. 21,936 minus 4.78p. That's the solution you came up with in question 1. And then from that now, we need to find the marginal revenue and the marginal cost in the problem. So to find the marginal revenue, what we need to do is build the inverse demand equation. Recall what inverse demand is? Yes, it's the demand function stated in terms of price. Price equals blah, blah, blah. So to do that, we'll just go through the steps for a minute. I'm going to move the minus 4.78p over here, so it's positive. Then I'm going to move the QD over here, so it's a negative. I've just about got inverse demand. Now all I've got to do is divide by 4.78. And when I do that, I get P is equal to 4, 5, 8, 9.
0.12.
Pardon?
I got 0.12.
Oh, cents.
Eh?
4,589.12.
Yeah, I left off the decimals.
Okay.
Minus 0.2092 QD. How did I get 0.2092? This
Divide
is
the 1.
1 times QD, so 1 divided by 4.78.
That was the 1 part I did.
So here's my inverse demand. Now, let me create some more space here. And I'll rewrite it up here. Now I've got inverse demand, 4,589 minus 0.2092. And this is what we've got to remember for this second exam as well. How do you get the marginal revenue curve from the inverse demand curve? Do you remember that? See, we only did it once briefly in class.
You have to double the slope.
Double the slope. Just in case you remember it in micro. In microeconomics, we would always draw the demand curve when it had a negative slope, and we would draw the marginal revenue curve inside of it, going into negative numbers. And in fact, it comes out halfway as far. Or, said another way, it's got twice the slope, it's twice as steep. So in order to do the marginal revenue here, we say that the slope is twice as steep. So marginal revenue, 4,589 minus 0.4184 QD. I just doubled that. So that's my marginal revenue. And then, I got to see the way it was stated here. The cost for producing this chair, this product, is constant at $1,200. That was your key phrase that told you what the marginal cost is. What's it cost every time I produce another chair? That's the part you couldn't get.
I got to that, and then I was like, there's something else I was forgetting. And I didn't even go back and read the problem. That's where I got stumped.
And the easy way for me to do that is to make it a constant cost, which means if we were doing it graphically, this would be our marginal revenue, and the marginal cost would be a constant line like that at $1,200. And here's the point I'm looking for where they intersect. For future reference, the intersection of marginal revenue and marginal cost in my Sanskrit is point alpha. And everything begins with alpha. You remember that, right? So, what we know from this problem is we have derived marginal revenue. We read carefully and see the marginal cost is 1,200, and then we set them equal to each other. So 1,200 equals 4589, 484 QD. And I'm not going to do that without my notes. I'll hurt myself. I don't know if you can see it. I've got my answers, and then I've got everything crossed out and put in red, because I screwed it up the first 2 times I did it too. My quantity, when I solved it, came up to about 8,100 units. And then, what did I do?
Well, that was the answer.
That was the quantity.
I plugged it into the P equation.
Yeah, I'm trying to see where I did that here.
I did.
45,
What did it ask?
12 minus.
Yeah, if you take this
Yeah, where's
and
the
plug it
sales
in up
price?
here, okay, then you'll get the price. This is the profit maximizing quantity and price. So I don't have that in front of me. Did you get a quantity there?
I got
Price?
the price. I got $2,894.56.
28.94.56. Okay. So if I charge $28.94, I will sell 8,100 units and I will maximize my profit. That was the extra credit.
Because I got to the marginal revenue equation, but I couldn't remember, okay, the marginal cost.
How many points did you get on that?
I got half.
You got half, okay.
Which is
You got
good.
five.
I mean, I attempted, because at first I wasn't going to attempt it. And I was like, I had time to do after the exam, like, I'm going to attempt it. At least I'll get whatever points out of doing that
I
part.
had to
So,
go back to it. It was like drawing a blank. But,
Yeah.
Now,
And-
I went back to it too, because I got stumped at the 1,200.
Uh-huh.
And I remembered one problem that you did, that we didn't use it in order to answer it. You had it written off to the side. I'm just going to throw this up here, you said. And we didn't need to find the answer. But then you went back and you said, well, let me show you what we can go from there and do.
Yeah,
and then you grabbed that total up there,
Yeah.
which had nothing to do with the problem,
Yeah,
and then you
because we
showed
were
us
just
something
doing
else.
well, it was also in the videos in YouTube or
yeah.
wherever, but I did.
How much time did you spend watching videos and studying this material?
A lot.
Okay, give me a ballpark figure per week.
Oh my word.
How many hours a week?
Well, I know we did a study group on a Saturday for at least 3 hours.
Okay.
And we knew that. And then
Yeah, I didn't go to that.
I didn't time myself with the videos. I just watched them. And then when I watched them and I took screenshots.
Okay.
So that I had notes to go back, and I printed them off, and I even shared them with some of the other students, so that I had something to review. That I didn't have to go back and watch the videos. I had how you plugged it in.
When you can see the numbers with a screenshot, that's you ain't got to take notes. You got it right there.
Did that, and you had all the steps in. And all I did was remember exactly what you were talking about,
Okay.
and I even made notes at the bottom of each screenshot, so I could remember how you got. So I'm looking at it, I'm like going, what am I looking at?
Yeah.
I knew what this was the inverse, function, and this is how you got it.
So would you say 10 hours a week?
Easily.
Yeah,
Yeah.
at
Okay.
least.
Definitely.
That's what we're saying in the SOM program. We're saying if you take 4 courses, that's equivalent to a 40 to 50 hour week.
Mm-hmm.
And so we have a lot of students who take 4 courses and work full time because it's so attractive to get that financial aid, or I'm in a hurry to get done. And halfway through their first term, they're just going down like flames.
Mm-hmm.
I've got a management course that's had 84 students in it. 3 sections. 52 of them were around to take the midterm. I lost 32 students. I lost over a third right there. So, folks aren't.
It takes discipline, because even the day of the exam, we met outside for at least an hour and a half. I think it was.
As soon as everybody could get here.
Yeah, as soon as everyone can get here, we studied, and then throw things off at each other. And said, well, "Did you remember this one?" And so that.
Yeah, and there were several people who didn't do well at all, but there were a few that almost got their C on this exam, not quite, and they just didn't either quite get it or didn't quite put in that extra couple hours that it would have taken.
So I had already decided when we took the test
Yeah.
that if I didn't pass it, I would stay in the class until that last withdrawal date,
Yeah,
just to be able to work through the material.
yeah, and then retake the course
And
and
then
then already
retake
seen
the
it
course.
once, yeah. All right, other questions, anything on the exam?
The consumer surplus for the facility,
For, which question was that on?
that was question
Question 1? 3?
D.
Oh,
I'm not, maybe I just need to read it.
well,
again.
think about it. This is an assisted living
Somewhere my
facility.
brain went south on that one.
Well, it's an assisted living facility.
Right,
Everybody's being charged the same price. Remember that? $43.90 per month or whatever it was. What happens whenever you charge all of your customers the same price? There's always a few out there that were willing to spend more money. So there's always some consumer surplus. There's a
okay.
few of those residents that they or their families probably would be grateful if they had to pay $6,000 a month because you are more convenient or whatever, okay? Because they think you've got such a great facility or such great people. If there's that group that's willing to spend $6,000 a month, and out of your 60 residents it's only 5 or 10 people, how do you go about getting that money? And that's what we do on the second part of this course, is we talk about how do you get the money. But the concept is very relevant for every business.
My brain was working on the 20% beds that weren't full.
Okay.
That's where I went with
Got you
that.
distracted.
That-
When you see a single
yeah.
price, consumer surplus is important. Think about the difference between if you go to buy something in a market, like in many countries overseas, every customer comes up and there's a haggling going on before they reach an agreement. And think how foreign that is in America.
Yeah.
Because most Americans, they don't want to argue with you. They just want to look at the price and decide if they want it or not. And that's where, as retailers or sellers, we kind of short-circuit ourselves. It makes it easy. We just put one price out and we don't have to worry about it. But that means a lot of money walks out the door.
Yeah, because we take an annual cruise to different places, and there are some countries that if you do not haggle with them, they won't sell you anything.
Yeah.
They'll say thank you and goodbye.
Yeah.
Because they consider it an insult.
Yeah.
They want that interaction between you, and if you don't, that's it.
Yeah. But when you're not used to it, it's a
Yeah, when you're
difficult
not
thing.
used to it, yeah.
So, if we're going to be successful in business, we've got to figure out maybe more subtle ways to give you a choice of how much do you want to pay.
Because I was thinking about that question because my former employer has senior living facilities, and one of the ways to capture that, they offer different levels of assisted living.
Absolutely.
And that's how they capture it.
It's
So
called-
it's not just
That's
one.
their
Yeah,
marketing plan.
they go,
It's a menu of services.
Yeah,
You know?
exactly.
And in fact, my dad's in one, and they assess them about every quarter and say, here's what we're doing, and here's where we feel maybe you should consider us doing this.
yeah,
Nothing pushy about it, just if you want to consider
here
it.
it is, and yeah, it's like
It's great.
if you want anything from like you live on your own, you just don't want to hassle with you owning your own home and stuff. To
Yeah.
you need full assistance with a nurse with you 24/7 type of the range, and they get to choose the level of options.
You bet.
So
And it's subject to manipulation because the demand for health care for your parents is very inelastic. And if they start raising the price, it's not like you're going to say, oh, heck no.
yeah.
So they have to be careful and gentle about the way they do it. Okay, anything else on the test? Cool. I'll get those back from you before we go. Anything new going on? Anything of interest or issue or questions or comments? When are you guys graduating?
Hopefully by the end of the fall.
End of
this
fall,
year.
December.
Yeah.
I'm taking it slow. I've got several more terms.
Okay. Well, you've got one of the worst courses pretty much out of the way you're going in this one. That's good news.
I don't know.
Oh, people who did very well on the test, not even focused on when I'm going to graduate. Maybe
I may go back down to part-time. I don't know. It all depends on what life gets in the way.
Okay. How many credits or courses do you still have left to take, you think?
I have 4 classes and then the capstone.
Excellent. You could be done next term.
Yeah. But, I work full-time and,
Yeah.
Wow.
That's rough.
Kind of full load.
yeah.
Wow.
Because-
And I got 2 children on Social Security to have to deal with.
Oh, my. I don't know how you do it.
Me either.
Because you've taken on to what probably 90% of the students who do that can't handle it.
Yeah.
That's cool.
If I don't stay focused,
And when we were talking earlier about job prospects and job search, if you don't make that point in your cover letter and interview, etc., about how you managed that extreme load, then I'll come around and smack you.
And I'm in my second term of being president of the Ladies Auxiliary at the AMVETS.
Okay, think about it. Think about what a statement that makes and how to throw that.
But you don't see me at Eastern Star anymore.
But again, they do want to know, because I know even when I applied here at Santa Fe College, how do you manage, and you let them know that, all the responsibilities that you do, it's like, yeah, you go work full time and you go to school and whatever else. They know you're organized, because you couldn't do that if you weren't organized,
disciplined, and focused. Exactly right.
Yeah.
Well, the one thing I did do, though, is that I've always been in management.
Yeah.
And I left the $50,000 a year job at UF and went down to, I just worked 8 hours a day as a cook for the state of Florida. I'm in a non-management role, non-thinking. I go in, I do what I need to do, and I go home. This is my priority.
Yeah.
Okay. But see, that's a very clearly defined priority and decision.
Yeah.
Too many times otherwise I'm seeing folks just kind of making the decision halfway or rationalizing, well, I can do it all, and it's that kind of poor judgment as an individual. If you can't manage yourself as an individual, how the hell are you going to manage a department? How are you going to take the responsibility for some other people's lives? Because that's what happens. So, it's an interesting time. I would entertain some comments from you at your leisure about how do you keep motivated, because certainly this gets to be a little bit of a chore every once in a while. How do you stay motivated?
My husband keeps pushing me. Every time I say, I quit, he says, you can do it. And I say, you're trying to kill me.
I think that's
mine. It's just people saying, I can't believe you're doing all that. It's like, but I see like the market. It's like I'm in a position that I don't want to be in for the rest of my life. There's no future. But I had to fall back on it because of other circumstances that were out of my control. So it's like, do I sit there and I can sit there and complain about it and just stay where I'm at, or do something about it? And my goal is, no matter how much longer I have as far as my work experiences, I want to make it do something.
There you go.
I don't want to waste that time.
Exactly.
So I think those of us in the HSA program, though, this is just an optimum time for us to be rolling into this.
Why is that?
I just think with all the things coming down the pike with Obamacare and the changes that are happening now,
and even aside from Obamacare, just the baby boomer cohort getting ready
for us to just now entering the field.
Sure, huge opportunity.
I think it's great, and we're not. I have two sisters that are nurses. And I see them struggling with it because they've been nurses for the last 10 years. I'm not struggling with the changes and everything else because I don't have anything to compare it to. I can just walk into this. These are the rules. I don't know what the rules were then. I'm not concerned about how you used to do it. But if I'm going to be management, whether I'm in a healthcare organization, an insurance organization, or whatever, this is what I know.
Well, and on the positive side, again, you're not bringing all this baggage of resistance and resentment. So
they're struggling with it, the electronic health records and the transitions and everything else. And this is all I'm going to know is what's there now and how it's supposed to be.
Every time I go to my doctor, they pull out their little laptop, and I say, "So how's it going?" And for the first year or so, they hated it. And now the last visit or so, we're finally getting the bugs worked out. It's working a little better.
Exactly.
Well, you better get used to it.
Yeah, my doctor's the same way. When I got him after coming out of the military, he bought it from my other physician, and it's funny trying to find stuff in the system of diagnosis or prescriptions or whatever it might be, because he's so used to the pen and paper and the pencil. He's so used to that, and seeing it and getting to that, it's a new level of technology for that generation of physicians that he's just not used to it.
It's changing fast. You either get on the train or you get left behind.
That's why I'm like, well, I'll come and help you.
The thing I'm seeing in the classes, most of the online classes where we do so many discussion posts, and you get to see so many different viewpoints, and you realize that there are some people who are thinking people and other people who just kind of shoot from the hip.
Mhm.
And it worries you, right, that they're going to be the ones in those management positions that may not step back and think about the big picture and
That's
try to do the best job.
That's right.
It is a daunting task. I mean, I can't even
Yeah.
imagine
I-
the challenges, and it's kind of scary to me as a
It should
person
be.
who, yeah. And
It should be. The good news
so I
is,
want to soak it all in and learn it so well, and it's a continual
Exactly.
process, even after we graduate, obviously. But
let's look at two different kinds of students. The ones who are thinking, and they're seeing things from a holistic perspective, and they're seeing how the decisions go, versus the person shooting from the hip.
Mhm.
The person shooting from the hip, if they get a job, probably won't last very long.
Yeah.
Okay? These are the people I was describing earlier. They're doing just enough to get by. They're the satisficers. And I'm sorry, if you're just a satisficer and you do just enough to get by, and you don't have your own personal, fairly high standard of ethics and performance, you really are wasting your time getting this degree. Because you're going to burn out, or flame out, probably.
Because I agree with you, because a discussion is supposed to be discussion.
Yeah.
And when you were talking about earlier about, let me know, you're writing all that down, it's showing the instructor what you've learned.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing that frustrates me when we have to reply to other posts is they'll say, please, and then all they do is if the instructor will ask you 3 different questions or whatever, and they'll reiterate exactly what the instructor did. Number 1, reword, write it down, and then
I get it on exams the same
It's
way.
like-
They rewrite the whole damn question.
yeah, and then they'll put in like maybe a 10 or 11 word sentence, and they'll move on. It's
Yeah.
like that's not a discussion.
Right. Now, if that's that person's standard of performance in school, what's their standard of performance in their profession? I don't think it's going to be a hell of a lot different. And that's why I'm telling you, you don't have a hell of a lot of competition out there.
But I've also seen people in positions that do have that mindset, that do keep those jobs. You know what I mean?
There are
That's
organizations
a concern there.
where, particularly where there's a lack of accountability and a lack of managerial competence from the top down, where those people hide, okay?
Yes.
No argument.
Yes.
What do you do when you get stuck in that position? You brush up your resume and you look around
Get
some
out.
more. Yeah, exactly. Okay. Everybody vented enough now? Cathartic about that? Let's pick it up with a new material. New material for the second exam. Starts with the assignments for tonight, and last week when we didn't meet was on perfect competition. A number of videos about that. And I'm not going to beat you up on the micro per se, but you do have to understand it as we go along, like marginal revenue, marginal cost. What we're really looking at for the second half of the course is what kind of competition am I facing? And it's going to go from a very high level, where you have lots of competition, to very little competition. Now, in the traditional microeconomics view, we break that into 4 categories. Each one, as we progress from left to right, talking about a system or a market structure where you have less and less and less competition. And the first one is called perfect competition. Perfect competition. In a sense, this is the gold standard. And by that I mean, this is what we measure everything else against to see how competitive it is. Now, it may be the gold standard, but it's also a hypothetical. It doesn't really exist in its perfect or pure sense. So we describe a theoretical ideal. We'll spend some time, even tonight, talking about the characteristics of that, so that we can compare the others to it as we go along, build a little terminology. The second type of competition is the one we use and see the most often. It sounds oxymoronic, but it's not. It's called monopolistic competition. Highly competitive. And a lot of the world is this way, particularly if you're in a small business or if you're in an environment where you have a number of competitors out there. We'll see that this model is probably the one we use the most. Later, we will get into the next one called oligopoly. Oligopoly literally means just a few sellers. And when you have very few sellers, you have less competition as a general rule. Not always, but generally. If you and I own the only 4 gas stations in town, how good of friends could we be? We could be cutthroat enemies. But would we get further down the road if we were friends? Oh yeah. We could all maybe go to supper once every month and chat about what do you want to do with prices next month. Now that's called collusion and it's illegal, but that doesn't mean it doesn't happen, right?
So what happens in small communities?
Well, it happens all
So-
over.
Yeah.
My parents owned a bar and restaurant, and there was 2 in town.
Mhm.
And the guy across the street, and mom and dad, prices were both the same. We were closed on Sunday, he opened on Sunday, and he was closed on Saturday.
Right.
Or he was closed on Monday.
Now what would have happened if one of them had cut their prices? The other one would do the same thing.
Yeah.
And so now they're both selling the same amount they used to pretty much at much lower prices. Right there, you got the whole story behind all oligopoly. We probably don't even need to touch on that if you understand that basic common sense thing. That when there are fewer sellers, there's a tendency for them to want to collude. And for you and I, if we're in business, there's a tendency for us to want to collude. And if we're not in business, if we are in fact government enforcement, we have a tendency to want to investigate and see if there is collusion. No big deal. So we'll touch on it. And then the last one is when you're the only seller in town, when you have a monopoly. And we'll pick up these two as we go along, but certainly not tonight. We'll just kind of introduce this stuff here tonight. So, if you have a whole lot of other sellers as competition, do you suppose that your demand curve for your product is fairly elastic or inelastic, and what's the difference? Here's demand curve number 1. Here's demand curve number 2. Which one is elastic?
T1.
D1. I remember it because I write the words this way. Elastic and inelastic. Memory trick for people from Alabama. The flatter the curve, the more elastic. Which one do you think applies to your company if you have 70, 80, 90, 100 competitors here in the area? Highly elastic. Because if people don't like what you're doing, they got a lot of other alternatives.
And it's going to be pretty close to be perfectly elastic, because the minute somebody does something, somebody else is going to react to it.
That's right. And especially if your customers know what everybody's charging and you raise your price even a little bit, if you're selling basically the same thing as everybody else, boom, they're gone. And so in this perfect competition world, for the company, remember it's a theoretical ideal, their demand curve is perfectly elastic. And let's say they're selling their product for $6. What that demand curve tells them is, you can sell as much as you want, as much as you can produce, all the way out to your maximum production, 1,000 units a week you can make. You can sell them all for $6. What happens if you charge $6.01?
You're going to go to somebody else.
You sell 0. The word for that in economics is stupid.
That's that other word.
What happens if you charge $5.99?
Again, same thing.
You sell them all, but you're still
But you're stupid. You're not making money.
because you could have made $6 a piece. So in this case, what we say is that the seller is pretty much a price taker. He kind of takes whatever price the market offers. He doesn't choose his price. Now, if that's the case, then his big decision is, given how much it costs me to run my business and produce my product, how many should I try to sell? And to do that, he takes his marginal cost curve, and as again, we generally say that it's got an increasing or a positive slope as you increase your output. And if he knows these two items, does he know marginal revenue? Yeah, every time he sells another product, he gets $6 extra revenue, so his demand curve and his marginal revenue curve are the same thing. So his decision in terms of the graph is to say, where's alpha? And wherever that is, he says, okay, that's how many I want to produce. Q pi max. So that's his first decision, is how many should I produce? And we'll do that with a couple of equations later, but we're doing the same thing just like we did on that extra credit problem. We're just mathematically solving for quantity. Now the second thing he's got to consider is when I sell this many units, let's put a number down here. His maximum output's 1,000, he's going to sell 600 units. How much money is he going to make? What's his revenue?
Cost time units.
Price times units.
Price, yeah.
Good. His total revenue is the price he receives times the number of units he sells, $6 times 600. He's going to make $3,600. But he's got to now look not at marginal cost, but at all of his costs. What we call the total cost, which is his fixed costs plus his variable costs. And so to do that, what we would do graphically is we would show the average total cost curve. And I don't recall if we did that in here, but it generally has a U shape to it. Okay? And so if you said, well, I've checked out my costs and here's what they look like. So that when I'm producing 600 units, each unit on the average costs me $5.15. On the average, not marginal, average. What's his total cost? If each unit cost him $5.15, that's his average cost.
That's quantity.
Times 600 units. So we got $5.15 times 600. So we got a number bigger than Strickland can do.
I didn't bring my calculator tonight.
600?
Huh?
Yeah, 600.
600?
3,090.
90.
Okay, so how did he do? Well, 600 minus 90, right? 510 with the new math, okay. Okay, so he's making $510. So he's got two parts to his decision. How many should I produce? And if I do that, will I make a profit? And we can calculate it. Now, the alternative, I'm going to go high-tech on you here, because we don't scrimp at Santa Fe.
Color chalk. Oh my.
No flash bulbs, please. See, a lot of people watching this video won't know what the hell I'm talking about.
No, mine's chisel and stone.
What if his cost structure looked like this?
Oh, that's that word again.
Well, he's in trouble.
Stupid.
Yeah, well, he says, well, if I do produce 600 units and I read up to my new average cost curve, dang, those things are costing me $7 a piece. I can't sell them for $6 if they cost me $7 on the average. I'll be losing money. So he's going to figure out the best quantity and then figure out if at that quantity, based on his revenues and his costs, is it going to make money or lose money. That's pretty much the decision, okay? It gets a little more entailed if you look at the videos about average variable costs, that he can in fact lose money in the short run if he needs to. As long as he's making enough money to pay his fixed costs, he could stay open. If you and I had a bar in Gainesville, how's business in July? Pretty slow. But, you know, if we have to pay $1,000 a month for rent, and we could make $600 a month by staying open, over and above our fixed costs. At least we can pay some of the rent, even though we're losing money. So we might stay open in the short run in the summer, because what happens come late August?
Your balls to the wall.
Yeah, we got them, yeah. So when we do that, we draw in an average variable cost curve, and we talk about if the price gets below that, you ought to just shut down and go fishing. But as long as you can cover some of your all your fixed costs and some of your variable, you ought to stay open. It's a general concept. And it's the sort of thing that if you and I were running a business, we'd figure that out in about 30 seconds. the first time we opened our bar that night, and we had to pay $100 to the hired help, and 2 guys came in and bought 4 beers, what would we be thinking? We need to be closed. We just lost $96 just for being open. If we were closed, at least we wouldn't have to pay the hire help. That's common sense. Well, that's what all these damn models try to explain. And then when the economists try to write it in a book, it's a nightmare. But
That's why some companies don't open like for lunch or dinner. They don't open for breakfast because they'll lose the money for those hours they're open.
Exactly right. Just exactly. Yeah. Okay, so we're not going to be in the perfectly competitive world, but we're going to want to be able to talk about it as though it's around. What does it take? This is worth a little discussion. See, one of the things I can foresee happening to you in your fields is you may not work for a private company, a for-profit company. You may work for a public company or a nonprofit. And in either case, public, private, nonprofit, for-profit, there is a central debate going on in the United States today, and that is, what is the legitimate role of government? And on many of the things that government is doing, would we be better to create a market for that and let private companies provide that service? Should we have private schools and just let every school work on a for-profit basis? We can debate that no end. If we gave every parent a voucher for each kid, said this'll, whoever school you take this to, they turn it in, that's how they get their money. And now all the schools are in competition with each other. And if you're the principal of a school where nobody wants to send their kid, you're broke, you're out of a job.
Isn't that kind of what the charter schools are already doing?
Sure, sure.
Okay.
But the people who are real strong believers in free markets will tell you if you want to clean up American education, that's the way to do it. Make those schools compete with each other for those students and those dollars. And if you're a good teacher in a great school and you got all these damn students, maybe you could make more money. I don't know. But look at the incentives.
Huh.
And then on the other side you say, well, you're going to have some schools who either the kids can't transport or we're not going to have enough good schools for all the kids. We just don't have that many excellent teachers, excellent facilities, excellent principals. So what's going to happen to the rest? Are those kids just going to get a lousy education? That's not fixing the problem.
Right.
Oh, well then what do we do about them? Well, there's ways to play with the market. We could say, well, if you come from a family whose income is below this level, we'll give you double voucher. So your kid is worth twice as much money to the school. You want to open a school up where we can attract those students? We could have a hell of a lot more money as long as we could keep them coming back every year and by giving them a good quality education. Maybe you can take the market system, this competition argument, and it can be very useful and very powerful. But maybe sometimes it doesn't work quite that way. Because typically in a competitive market, if you're not talking about tax dollars, if you're talking about everybody buying stuff out of their own income, out of their own pocket, what do we know? Some of us got less money than others. And therefore we can't even play in some of these free markets. So what I want you to get out of, the major part of what we're doing for this part of the term, the course, is what are the arguments for and the arguments against free markets versus government providing a service or a product even. And the way you do that, the first thing you understand is what is high levels of competition? What is perfect competition? So there are 4 assumptions. The 4 assumptions behind perfect competition. If you watch the videos, you may recall this. But if we see these assumptions, we see how powerful the model is. First assumption, lots, technical term there, lots of small buyers and sellers. And by lots, I mean hundreds and hundreds of thousands. Because if there are a whole bunch of real small sellers out there, we have plenty to choose from. None of them can have a monopoly or even a large ownership of part of the market. Okay? No Walmart's allowed. 2, it's really easy to go into business. We say easy entry, and it's also real easy to go out. Easy entry and exit of businesses into the market. Really unrealistic, but look at it. Homogeneous products. Homogeneous, what's that mean? Alike, identical. That to the consumer, they're all the same. Can you think of a product that for you is a homogeneous product?
Going by milk.
Huh?
Going by milk.
Okay, and let's say, to make it precise, 2% milk, okay? Is 2% milk all the same wherever you buy it, whatever the brand?
I would assume so.
Yeah.
2% milk.
Which
Or are you saying price?
no, I'm saying,
The product
is,
itself.
in your
Product
mind,
itself.
is
Yeah.
2% milk the same wherever you buy it?
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, now other people may disagree with you, and I've had students tell me that if you don't buy TG Lee, you're out of your mind, okay? I can't understand that.
Yeah.
But if they're all the same, where would you go to buy your milk?
Where it's most convenient.
Where it's most cheap. And convenience wraps into there. Okay? So when we assume all the products are equally interchangeable among the buyers, then they tend to pursue the cheapest price. And the sellers who hold their prices too high tend to have no customers. This doesn't really exist. But let's see where it plays in later. Fourth and last, there's perfect information. All the buyers know what the prices are. They know how to judge the quality of the product. You can't put one over on them. They're well informed.
Are they well informed of each other's movements too?
Sure.
Is that where your collusion comes in?
No, there's no collusion possible because there's too many sellers. The first time
Oh,
6 of them
okay.
get together, the other 900,000 put them out of business. Yeah. Now, these are important because in the first place, these don't exist all in one place anywhere around. This is a theoretical model. And so when someone says, I think we need a market, we need to let the free market work, your first question should be, how close to this would that free market be? Let's take healthcare insurance. We need to let healthcare insurance companies compete with each other, and that will drive prices down. Why might that be false? How many companies out there sell health insurance?
They're already too big.
There's about 7 major ones.
Yeah.
So immediately, this ain't true. Are health insurance policies pretty well uniform across companies? This ain't true. Is it easy to go into business to be a health insurance company? This ain't true. Do you and I as buyers have perfect information about those insurance companies? This ain't true. So when the argument's made that we need to make health insurance in a competitive industry, your warning sign should be going off saying, no, somebody's got a vested interest in seeing that happen. Who do you suppose it is?
The health insurance.
The health insurance companies.
That's why they backed Obamacare so heavily.
Yeah. That's why they were absolutely opposed to government insurance. Term went out of my mind, or we could all get our insurance through the government.
Right.
Yeah. And there are arguments against that, okay? Because if government, you get into the debate, is government going to provide the insurance, or is it going to also provide the health care? And that gets real tricky.
Well, the insurance companies, for a certain extent, are going to be competing
Yes.
against each other for the government contracts.
Yes.
And for the,
If the
companies though too.
If the government uses its power. You have a market instead of a monopoly, we have a market called a monopsony. That's where there's not one one seller. There's only one buyer. If the federal government provided all of our drug care, could they go to the pharmaceutical companies and say, we need this many units of this product, here's the price we're willing to pay, take it or leave it? What would that do to the drug companies? They wouldn't have any bargaining power. They'd have very little. There'd have to be some reasonable, exchange, but if the government used its buying power to force prices down, to provide pharmaceuticals to you and I, would there be an advantage there? Maybe. What would happen if you represented the pharmaceutical companies? What would you say? If you force our prices down too low, we can't even afford to do the research and development to find new drugs. We have to be profitable to put that profits into long-term development. And so it's a gray area you can debate forever. But I want you to be able to take a situation and say, what would be the pros and the cons to doing this with a market system as opposed to the government providing it? Because I can see wherever you may be going, particularly in the case of healthcare, that debate will raise its ugly head regularly. And so at least you'll have some of the economic thinking and theory behind it. Okay. Let's do the theory just a little more. What happens is we particularly take that homogeneous products assumption, where every product is identical to the buyer. And we say, let's change that. Let's let every seller be able to change his product slightly. Heterogeneous products, or what we more commonly call product differentiation. And now we've set foot into reality. Because sellers differentiate themselves from each other. How does 7-Eleven or convenience stores differentiate themselves one from another? They look pretty much alike, don't they? I'm talking too fast. You take notes. How does my convenience store differentiate itself from your convenience store?
But do you mean within the same brand, or?
I mean, are all convenience stores pretty much the same?
Products that they offer?
Yeah, pretty much the products they offer are pretty common, I think.
Yeah.
What's different about each one?
They might try to offer a special coffee or
They
something
might.
like that.
But what's the real difference between each store?
Just usually the logos.
No, where they're located.
Yeah, convenience. Yeah.
Their location is how they differentiate themselves. That's the difference between the stores. Look at this. I could give you multiple instances of this in Gainesville. If you are familiar with 39th Avenue going out to the airport, where it crosses Northeast 15th Street. 30 years ago, there was a convenience store here.
It's not there anymore?
It's all boarded up.
Oh.
Here's what I'm saying. Here's where the store was. Subsequent to that store being established and having a trading area from which it drew its customers around in here, another store opened right here. This one went out of business. Why?
Because the one was on the corner.
Because this one was on the high traffic road. There's no traffic on 15th Street. And so all this traffic going by here would stop in there and keep going, stop in there and keep going, stop in there and keep going. And the next thing you know, they're getting fancy, they're advertising more, they've got cleaner facilities, etc. And this one's gone. Location is how they differentiated themselves. And those who were successful with their differentiation survived, and the others went under. So when we get into differentiated products, we're into monopolistic competition. We have everybody out there, all those competitors, each one trying to be his own monopoly by having a unique product or a unique service or a unique location or a unique advertising or whatever. And when that happens, one big change happens to our analysis. The demand curve now has a negative slope. Because you can now, as the seller, you can pick the price you want to charge. If you've got a really good location, you can charge higher prices. If you've got a really great product, you can charge higher prices. And when you do that, your marginal revenue line now, remember, is halfway inside. Halfway out to the demand curve, twice the slope. And there's a marginal cost curve. And the first thing we look for is point alpha, right here. That's alpha. So that's how many units we ought to be selling. And if we're going to sell that many units, we need to know what price will give us that level of sales. So we read up to the price line, which is known as the demand curve, and we say, here's the price I should charge. So that's Q pi max and P pi max. That's what we should be doing, and we only have one more question to ask. What's that? If I sell 917 units at a price of $4.29 a piece, will I make a profit? And what will that depend upon? Well, I know my revenues. It's price times quantity. What I need to know is, what's my cost per unit, my average cost? So, two different average cost curves. Here we go, a second color. Watch this. Average cost like that. Ah, yeah. How am I doing if that's the case? If that's my cost curve? For 917 units, I read up to my cost curve. I read over, and it's below $4.29. It's only $3.20. So how am I doing? I'm making a profit. If I wanted to graph it, I would say this shaded rectangle is my profit. Because that's the difference in the price times the number of units sold. However, what if instead my costs look like AC2? Stupid, screw me. When I read up here, now my average cost per unit is $6.41, and I'm selling for $4.29, and I'm sending home to mama. Because I can't take care of myself.
Start hiring family and don't pay them.
Say again?
Start hiring family.
Don't pay them.
Yeah, hire family and don't pay them.
What do you do with the farms?
Now, this is all in the videos. You can look through and review that. It's not any big deal. What now becomes interesting, and this is true regardless of what particular industry you're in. It's even true of you and I. Are we competing with one another? You just told me you're going to be competing with folks in the job search process.
Right.
How are you going to differentiate yourself from them?
Well, like you said, the cover letter and how you market yourself.
Okay, I would start there. I would look at dress and appearance. I would look at letters of reference. And for those letters of reference, a conversation with those people to rehearse them on what you would like them to say if they are called. What else? How do you find the best jobs, by the way?
Networking.
Yeah, they're never advertised. Why aren't the best jobs ever advertised?
It's far easier to hire somebody that you know, that someone's going to recommend somebody versus somebody cold off the street, you don't know them.
That's right. Think about how much it costs to hire someone and train them for a month or a year till they get up to snuff. You're risking several $1,000s. Wouldn't you rather risk that money on someone you know a little bit about, or that some of your trusted people know a lot about?
Less of them.
Sure. So if you go into job search mode and you do it by sitting on the couch and sending out resumes, there's an economics term for that too. Stupid. So this whole thing about differentiation is not just about markets, it's about you and me and what we're trying to do and where we're trying to go. So when we get into product differentiation, that then opens the door to the whole field of marketing. And if you looked at the course schedule for tonight, it talked about marketing, marketing plans, the product life cycle, and stuff like that. I don't want to beat that to death tonight. I'll do some more on it. I may make another video on the side. But what we are doing now, we're trying to decide, for example, not just the right price, but how can we change that demand curve for our product? In other words, can we make our demand curve, if this is where we are, we're selling at this price and this quantity. We think our demand curve looks something like D1. Is there any way you and I, through product differentiation and marketing, could possibly rotate this demand curve to look like D2? In other words, could we make the demand for our product more inelastic? Well, there's 4 things that determine the relative elasticity for a product. I don't recall that we discussed them. 1, is the good a necessity?
Oh, yeah, we did. Yeah, we did.
Good. 2, are there many substitutes, or if there are few substitutes, this is what makes the demand inelastic. The opposite makes the demand elastic. 3,
Time.
if there is little time to search or decide. And 4,
Money, income.
if it accounts for a
Proportional amount of their income.
small percentage of our income or budget, or our customer's income or budget. Can we manipulate these things for our company or our product or ourselves?
Through advertising, like convince them.
Yeah.
Long, you keep
Yeah.
doing it. You convince them that.
Convince them that it's a necessity.
Yeah.
You've got to have this new fangled thing that's exactly the same as what it was yesterday, but today it's in a new package.
Yeah. What is it?
Try this.
Bold new bold new look. It's the same like everywhere.
Yeah, it's the same thing as persuasion, because perception is reality.
But whatever you and I see is our reality. And we need to, if we're going to be successful, we need to change the perception of our market, whether it's our potential employers or our potential customers. So how do you make your product, or you, take on the characteristics of a necessity? I believe that, at least with those of you here tonight, you and I can sit down one-on-one for a couple, 3 hours once or twice and build a resume that would have no competition. When you have no competition, there are no substitutes, and you damn sure become a necessity if you're selling to the right person. Based on the same things we started off talking about tonight. Your experience, your maturity, your soundness, and what's the word I'm looking for? Ability to focus, ability to organize, ability to show up on time, things like that.
That reminds me of a news article that I read where a gentleman changed. He isn't a marketing individual, and he changed his resume to actually look like a candy wrapper. He spent the money to buy the candy bar, but the resume was actually the wrapper, and he put, and it looked like he would on the back of a particular candy bar, the ingredients, and he put down all the marketing stuff that he's done, and the percentages, the nutritional values were changed to, hardworking or going over 100% or whatever. And
always achieves 110% of quota.
Yeah. But as a marketing tool, that's what he marketed, and it was low cost for him. Yeah. But it was high visibility because people saw that going, well, if they could do that type of marketing themselves, and in an inventive way that many people are so used to the paper resume standard.
And he's marketing himself in a marketing environment where they appreciate that. If he'd gone down to get a job at a hospital about like that, they'd say,
with a candy wrapper, they look at him like he was nuts.
Some people would, they throw the wrapper away, they thanks for the candy. But
sure, yeah, exactly. So, we can play games with these things about how to make the demand more inelastic. One of my favorite challenges to my micro class is to say, you're the president of Santa Fe College. And next fall, we're going to raise tuition out here by 20%. And I will give you a $100,000 bonus if enrollment doesn't drop more than 3%. What have I just said? I want you to make the demand for students out here, their demand for Santa Fe, become highly inelastic. And if you're the president, how would you do that? You would begin a commercial campaign and propaganda to the effect that you need to go here. There ain't nobody like us with the biggest feeder that you have, and we got these new bachelor's degrees, and on and on and on. You wouldn't announce the tuition increase until the day before classes started.
That's okay.
And you would advertise way down in South Florida where all the rich people live. Okay? That's the same thing. We can take this concept and use it to our advantage for our company or anything else. A challenge might be if you had an assisted living facility. What could you do to make the demand more inelastic? And you would immediately go to this list to start. Now, what happens if you make the demand more inelastic? Here's your existing consumer surplus. What happens to your consumer surplus if demand becomes more inelastic from this price?
goes out.
It goes way the hell up here, and well, that's consumer surplus too, so there's a whole lot more money out there to be made. Okay? The second thing is, can we, through an appreciation of marketing and persuasion, can we take our demand curve from D1 to D2? And there are 5 forces that shift the demand curve. They are number of buyers, buyers' expectations, prices of related goods, incomes, tastes and preferences. So then the question becomes, can you and I as managers or owners change any of these?
Well, you can change the number of buyers by marketing to a different area or a different class or...
Yeah, we begin to target market multiple segments. Maybe we target the seniors and we give them a kind of a twist on the product, and we target the teenagers and give them a twist on the product. Yeah, maybe we need to reconfigure our product to suit it to a different market as well as the one we're doing now. But again, my premise and for this course is, if you can remember this list and this idea, that's your takeoff point for creativity. What kind of things can we do? Well, here's a framework. Get started. Build me some ideas. So, again, I teach this in micro, but we don't have enough time in the course, really, to get into the applications of it. But this is basic microeconomics, that when you use it as an application tool, I think it's real powerful. It helps organize your thinking. That's what I want to have come out of this course. Can I increase or decrease the elasticity of demand, make it more inelastic, and can I, in some way, shift the demand curve? Typically, we think of doing that with advertising. One last thought, and then we'll give this a rest. Product life cycle. I don't know where you're going to wind up working, but if you're in an organization where you might have an opportunity to increase sales, increase number of customers, increase the number of residents at an ALF, think about this. Most products, not all, the majority of products follow a pattern sort of like this. This is sales, number of units, and this is, I'm sorry, I got it backwards. This is time, and this is number of units sold. And typically when somebody comes up with a new product, when they first introduce it for that first month or 2 or 3 or 6, sales grow very slowly. Kind of like that. Because you're trying to get the word out. And if you're going into competition with somebody, you're trying to bring customers away from them. We opened up our new taxidermy business, I can assure you the first 6 months was miserable. We couldn't get much business. But you got to hang on. If you are successful in terms of your product and its quality, etc., and you're talking to the right people and you give it time for the word to get around, if you are successful, the second part of the curve begins to look like this. That in about the same amount of time, sales take off. So this is the introduction phase. And the kind of marketing you've got to do in there may be way different than the kind of marketing you're going to do next year or 2 years from now. The second phase we call the growth phase. That's when it catches on enough and it works, it clicks. After a time, sales will slow down. You start seeing this kind of a pattern. Still growing, but only growing slowly and kind of cresting. This is called the maturity phase. And then eventually, if you don't do something about it, you get into the decline phase. Your sales start falling.
Kind of like life.
Kind of like life. Well said.
These are the teenage years.
Yeah.
This is the infancy.
I'm thinking infancy, teenage,
Yeah.
young adult, mature adult, geezer.
Until the geezer gets back down to the infant stage, no hair, no teeth, no can't hear.
That's true. So, that's the product life cycle. Those are the 4 phases. Think about the kind of people that buy stuff when it's brand new. Are you one of those? Do you buy new stuff? I'm not. I don't take any chances. They call these people innovators. They like to be the first people on the block to have something.
They also pay the higher price for stuff.
Oh,
Sure
yeah.
they do. A very dear friend of mine owns the Apple store out in the town of Tioga. And man, particularly if Apple puts it out, but any kind of other technological products, man, Jimmy's got them. He's going to be the first one to get them.
Yeah.
I love that. So I can learn from him.
Yeah.
I'm not buying a damn thing, you know?
Especially like the flash drives when they first came out,
Uh-huh.
they're like $85, but they were very little memory. And
Yeah.
the individual, because I was taking a class at one of the places that does that type of stuff, but he came in, he's at lunchtime, look what I got, I'm like, okay, what is it?
Yeah.
Because mostly it's infancy, but
You'll know you're a geezer when people bring you stuff that they don't know what it is and you do. We found in our unit the other day a box of floppy disks.
uh-huh.
I mean the real floppy. You know what a floppy?
Yeah,
Five-
the-
the
5 1/4
yeah.
that you can bend around.
Uh-huh.
What the hell is this?
I had a
They actually said that? What is this?
Yeah,
They
what
didn't
is
know
this?
it was?
What is this for?
I had, we hired a student from the local high school, which is across from our business, and he actually was getting my first degree. He looked at this machine, he's like, what is this? I said, that's a typewriter.
Yeah.
He goes, a what? I said, a typewriter. Before computers. It's like, I was like, you've never seen a typewriter? He's like, no. Never seen a typewriter
Yeah,
before.
you know you're a geezer when you walk into a museum and there's a typewriter sitting there and you learn how to type on it.
Yeah. Or your old lunchbox is sitting
Yeah.
there.
Well,
I walk in with a slide rule once in a while.
Oh,
Was-
my son thinks he died and gone to heaven when he figured out a slide rule. He took it to school with him. He was the only one who knew how to do it.
CDs versus RPM, 33 and a 3.
Oh, yeah. I said something the other day in the class. I said, and so here I was talking like a 33 on 78. And the blank looks on their face, and I'm like, oh.
Exactly.
Or my favorite when you watch those older movies and they have the phones, but they're in a bag and they have a cord.
I remember my
I
bag.
remember those, I do too. Or the pagers. They're like, a pager? What the heck's that? Yeah.
I mean,
The rotary
when you say
phone.
rotary dial phone,
Yeah.
they're
Yeah.
going to look at you and do what?
What?
But why do we still say that?
I don't know.
Why do we still say dial the number?
Well,
This generation
Trust me.
doesn't know what it is.
trust me, you and I are the only ones saying it.
I still say it.
I know. Geezer.
What I like is when somebody asks me what time it is, I say it's 1/4 till.
Yeah.
They don't know what time it is. Or 1/2 past.
Oh, well, they can't even actually
That's
read.
old people time.
Yeah, they actually read, an actual
Oh, yeah.
piece.
They
They can't read that. Like,
They
what
can't
is
read
that?
clock.
They have to have it digitalized for them.
Yep. Okay. Assigned out of chapter 8, because that's kind of where we're starting, are some questions. And the answers for them are on Angel. So if you would, between now and the next time we meet, these start, I think, with question 9 and 10. Well, maybe back over here at question 2 and 4. But if you would, kind of march through the assigned questions for chapter 8. Let me know on the discussion forum if you're having any kind of issues with them. And we'll use that as kind of a base around which we'll build the next exam, because that will take us through a little bit of perfect competition and monopolistic competition, or what we'll call competitive markets.
I got so used to working through the
VRSQs.
VRSQs and watching the videos, I totally forgot about
Some of the assignments on that.
this thing with the assignments until you just said that.
Well, take a look at them and see how you feel about them, and let me know if there's some issues. If you tell me via the discussion forum in the next week or so that this ain't working, then I'll make another video and just work a few of the problems for the heck of it. If not, then when we meet next time, we'll work through a few of them. The other thing, remind you what I said earlier, the next exam, the second exam, will have you taking 2 data points, constructing a straight line demand curve and establishing the consumer surplus. But then the second part will be, what do you do to get that consumer surplus? And you will find that is covered in the material for next class. It's called block pricing, 2-part pricing, some different pricing strategies and techniques, and we'll talk about those. That, I think, is pretty much what I wanted to cover tonight. Anybody else got any issues? It is. I haven't totally thought through everything I want to do the rest of the course, but I have a general sense it's going to slow down a little bit. There's not going to be as much of it.
Well, you originally told us that the bulk of was getting the first half down, so that we had the groundwork.
Because the second part's building on the
It would
first,
be all
right?
kind of like theory and.
But don't forget the first. You have to have.
That's
I
why
gotta figure out how to do it.
We're going to do that demand curve again.
Well, it's a
We're
good
manipulating.
refresher to make sure that he keeps it in your mind.
Yeah.
Will you be doing the like you did last time, the study questions, the
Problem sets?
Yeah.
I haven't put any together. That's why I'm asking you to do these questions in place of them right now.
Okay.
I will put some together, but it may be another couple of weeks before I've got some of those where I want them.
Because I found those to be really helpful.
Yeah.
And then you can make up your own based on that, just change a few variables.
That's right, just exactly.
And then, because I noticed that some of this, what you did in this one was, we've seen the setup, but you have to know the.
I'm a little biased.
Yeah.
I thought that problem sets were plenty adequate to prepare for that
Oh,
exam.
yeah, it
And you
was.
guys
Yeah.
Oh,
showed
yeah.
It was.
yeah, it's change the names to protect the innocent.
Yeah.
It was almost.
Thank you.
The
That's what I was
concept-
trying to say.
Yeah, the concepts were there. Just you knew that, you can go through it.
Now, what I can see on this next exam is if I say, here's a competitive firm, and they've got to do something about their problems, their issues, their sales. Well, you've got those 2 lists we started with tonight, so you can imagine a more wordy response as opposed to calculating stuff. That's kind of the nature of, a little bit of the difference in this material now. It's more discussion nature as opposed to calculations.
Because I remember you were like, make sure you know those both sets of lists, because it will come into play again. I was like,
Absolutely.
I kept going over and over on that, so I had it.
Good. Okay, anything else?